Welcome back to the Blue White Illustrated Penn State Football and Recruiting Podcast, which is now presented by our friends at Manscaped. Join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer just for you guys, 20% off and free shipping with the code 20PSU at manscaped.com. We'll tell you a little bit more about them later in this episode. I'm Greg Pickel. Ryan Snyder will hear from him in just a few minutes, but we have a lot to get to this week. A decommitment took place, a new commitment took place. The James Franklin rumors have a lot of people questioning whether that will impact Penn State's recruiting class. Ryan was on the road to see Beau Pribula. Josh Miller, the offensive lineman 2023 from Virginia, is set to make an announcement next week. So a ton to get to on this episode. Ryan, welcome in. How are you doing? How's your week looking? And where do things stand in your mind at this point in time before we get into the latest Penn State game day commitment?
Man, the James Franklin rumors are picking up, aren't they? With that whole agent signing, I've had a couple parents already reach out to me asking about that. You know, I think just like everybody else, it's an interesting announcement. I guess I'm curious to know. He probably didn't really want that out there. I don't know. Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. And maybe it has nothing to do with him potentially moving on. But obviously, hiring Sexton is a notable move. So it kind of feels like it's hovering over everything right now, and I have so many people curious about it, and I don't really have many more answers. I wish I did, but everything's going really well on the recruiting trail, but it feels like until there's clarification with that, I feel like it should be in a holding pattern. Maybe we won't be. We'll talk about Josh Miller here in a little bit, but it's just such an interesting 6 to 7 weeks here coming up, especially after that Illinois loss. I'm just really curious to see where it goes, man. It's going to be a very interesting couple months here. They need to sign this class. They put a lot of work into this class. So if something were to happen, and I wrote the other week that if James were to leave, there's no way it wouldn't be after December 15th, because those schools would want him on board. I mean, that's why they make this move, right? That's why they're making moves when they are. So just an interesting time, man. A tough loss. They got to rebound. This trend of losing 2 straight and off of bye weeks is definitely disturbing. But aside from that, things are going pretty well in recruiting. So that's I don't know what to think right now. It goes both ways. So
well, we'll get into some more of that talk in a little bit, but let's move into our first topic of the day, and that's Joey Schlaffer committing to Penn State. Another game day commitment for James Franklin for the class of 2023. He's a guy that, as we've mentioned, is a half-brother of former Penn State offensive lineman Michael Menet, who was also on the field when Joey committed, and obviously that was a great moment for those guys and the family. Ryan, how did this one come to be, and how important is it for Penn State to get a tight end early in the class of 2023 with the obvious caveat of what we talked about just a few minutes ago and what we talked about, and we're going to talk about in a little bit, means that, this class is a long, long way from signing, which we all know.
Well, I mean, look, as soon as he was offered, this was coming, right? He visited Maryland, he visited Tennessee in the summertime, but this was, as Joey pretty much admitted, as soon as he was offered, he kind of knew where he wanted to be. Ty Howell gets a big shout out here. I didn't realize how hard, I guess, Howell was pushing for him earlier in the process, like before he got an offer. It felt like Ty was really on board with Joey pretty much from the start. And then, as the rest of the staff saw more film, that's kind of where the offer came from. But this is another. They never want to let top guys leave the state, and it was becoming more and more clear that Joey deserved to be considered one of those top guys. What was his offer count? I believe it was 18 or so. Like I mentioned, Tennessee and Maryland, They kind of felt like the main competitors. That's where he went and visited. But Michigan State was pushing, West Virginia, Pitt was in the mix. But this always, to me, if Penn State offered, this was going to happen. It was inevitable. You and I did a roundtable a couple weeks ago, and you had him as the guy to watch. And whether it was in October or November, it was going to happen. If Penn State doesn't offer, I felt like he was kind of trending towards Tennessee. But then, like we said, just when this offer came, it was only a matter of time. So props to Ty Howell. This is. To me, this was maybe Ty Howell's first big commitment. Matthias, of course, was already on board previously, and Snyder has some ties with Matthias. So that Ty Howell deserves credit for Matthias. Don't get me wrong, but to me, like, this was his first really big get, and Joey's going to be a heck of a player. He's there's a lot to like. I mean, obviously, when you look at his frame, you would think he needs to add some more weight, and what can he do from a blocking perspective. Now, I was talking to T Frank too, and he was pointing out some things that his technique's actually pretty good from a blocking perspective. So if he's able to just kind of put on weight and obviously everybody's got to keep improving, but there is stuff there to like from a true inline tight end. To me, I just see a bigger receiver right now, but T Frank thinks that he can do a variety of roles, and I like to listen to what T Frank thinks.
So the question becomes at this point, Matthias Barnwell, is he an offensive lineman or is he a tight end? Joey Schlaffer, is he a big receiver or is he a tight end? So I guess the question then to you to spin this forward is, it's not like Penn State only offered these two guys at tight end and put all of their eggs into the basket of the two guys who are now committed. Obviously, they pushed very hard for these guys. They wanted them. But in your mind, Ryan, are they done at this position, or do they need to get another one, with the assumption being that one of these guys probably is not going to be a tight end at the college level?
Yeah, Matthias, of course, is the one that offensive tackle makes a whole lot of sense there. Now, of course, Matthias has been losing a little weight from what I've been able to learn. He seems like he's down a little bit. He was at, I think, 270 at one point, and now he's getting closer to 250. Now, whether that's losing weight because he's trying to stay in shape for tight end, or he's just playing a season and weight naturally comes off, well, only time I really tell there. But Neo Avery was arguably their top tight end prospect from the start, and the good counsel player. He was close to committing to Georgia at one point, and I think I was talking to you or T Frank about this a little while back, and when he didn't commit to Georgia, talk about Avery, I thought, is Georgia not ready to really take him? That was the first thing that popped up in my mind. But what I've learned is Penn State, I don't want to say they had a hand in him not committing, but they pushed really hard there as we were getting close to that on just explaining, why they think he'd be a good fit, and maybe hold off a little bit. And it seemed like Penn State was able to. I'm not going to say was the reason that he didn't, but they certainly had a hand in him not deciding when he did. So I always kind of thought with Avery it was Georgia and Penn State, and we'll see where more of these visits go. He's been up here 2 or 3 times now, but Avery makes the most sense as far as a true tight end addition that will come. Nicholas Harbor, of course, is kind of considered a tight end, but I think defensive end makes the most sense for him long term. But he's just kind of an athlete, and that's the the label we'll put on Harbor. So there's other guys too, like Andrew Rapelier was up here, but to me it would really be focus on Avery, try and get Avery, and then of course if you can get Harbor too, then you have a lot of options to play around with. But all those guys are versatile in different ways. So but Avery makes the most sense, no doubt.
So we started with the good news on this edition of the Blue White Illustrated Penn State Football and Recruiting Podcast. Let's move on to the not as good news. Jordan Allen and Penn State parting ways. He reported it over the weekend. It became public either late Sunday night or first thing Monday morning. Ryan, this was a case of, I think, the prospect started looking around, and Penn State was maybe not as aware of that as it would have liked to be, is probably a fair way of putting it. And we've seen this happen before where players will go take visits after committing, and sometimes it leads to this, sometimes it does not, but in this particular case it did.
Well, we'll start with this. Like, I think a lot of fans think that there is a blanket policy, right? That
Sure.
You don't go visit schools, and if you visit schools, you're done. And that's definitely not the case. A couple of Penn State's commits have gone to visits this year, other schools. Anthony Ivey just went to Rutgers a couple of weeks ago. Now, it was to watch a friend of his play, and he was open about it from the start. And, I don't think Penn State ever had really any concerns. And the key thing there was open about it from the start. And that wasn't the case here with Jordan Allen. So Penn State, from what I understand, they learned about Jordan potentially taking an Ole Miss official visit from the media. And that's never a good place to start when Penn State learns things by members of their staff reading Rivals and 247 and whatnot. So he was kind of given an opportunity to not visit, and that's what we reported. Then we followed up, and I thought he wasn't going to visit. So then late Friday night, I learned that there was a discussion with Penn State and Jordan, and it was kind of up in the air still whether he visits. And then, of course, Saturday morning is when we reported that he needs to be taken off the commitment list, basically. So this really just comes down to him I think just not being open with the staff about things. Now, if he was open from the start and him going to visit Ole Miss, it's a little different than Anthony Ivy going to visit Rutgers. I don't think Penn State had any concerns about losing Anthony Ivy. So every situation is different. I mean, I think that's just the best way to explain it. There really isn't a blanket policy, but I know Penn State was a bit upset with Jordan not just being open and honest about it. Now, he did go to visit LSU, I believe, 2 weeks ago, too. And I don't have an answer for whether he told Penn State about that or not. I'll probably never really get a true answer for that.
Right.
But this wasn't Jordan Allen's first visit elsewhere. And I thought that LSU was the only school to really be concerned about. He grew up an LSU fan, didn't have an offer, but whether whoever gets hired there at LSU, if they offered him late, that was kind of what I was focused on. But yeah, he goes and takes this visit, and I'm not going to say he cut himself or Penn State cut him. It just kind of was a mutual decision to go different ways. So one thing I'll last say too is I think a lot of people are going to ask, well, is this going to be used for Larry Turner Gooden or another player? And the first impression I get is that
Penn State. You stole my segue.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry. Yeah, well, I knew we had to hit on it, so my fault about that. But I think just a transfer, keeping scholarships open for the transfer. I mean, Penn State is truly maxed out. I know. I think a lot of fans don't grasp that because we keep talking about Jayshon Barham and Emil Wagner and Larry Turner Gooden.
Who's talking about Jayshon Barham? That name never comes up.
Yeah, I never see it on my Twitter feed. No. But they are maxed out, and yes, they can continue adding guys, and the more guys they add, the harder it makes it to get to that 85 number. So, sometimes you got to just add players because they're incredibly talented. And that's kind of where those three guys I mentioned kind of fit. But, if it's not becoming clear to fans that now that there are a few gaps in this roster that could really use a transfer, then I don't know what to tell you. I mean, there's a couple spots that it's very obvious. I've been saying for a while now that Penn State absolutely has to pursue a transfer quarterback in the offseason. If Clifford stays, maybe not. But if Clifford leaves, they absolutely have to. They need somebody with experience there. So just my point with this is that this scholarship doesn't have to be filled by a high school guy. I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's not filled. They just add Barham still, and that be the end of it. And then they could maybe use this scholarship to either get close to their 85 number or try and pursue a transfer down the road.
So the concerning thing, and this relates to recruiting as much as anything else, but when you look at the depth across Penn State's various position groups, it's not necessarily as deep as maybe it once felt like it was once you have some injuries pop up and things like that. I think you also have concerns for down the road going into next season. How many guys leave early to the NFL? How many guys might hit the transfer portal going out? So you're going to need some space to bring guys in, which is why, to your point, it's not going to be an automatic fill this spot with another high school kid, because you're probably going to want to save as much room as you can to try and attack the transfer portal as aggressively as you can. So we'll see how that plays out. In terms of, I guess, moving this conversation on, Monday morning, the first reaction to this Jordan Allen news was, oh, here we go. Here they come the decommitments. Penn State just lost to Illinois. Now here come the decommitments. And it's like you just explained, this was in the works previously. And I'm I'll let you speak to this, but my gut feeling is that Penn State's loss to Illinois is not going to start this avalanche of guys going elsewhere. No. I don't see it. This class has been very stuck together, I would say, is probably not the correct grammar word to use, but it's true. It's a pretty close class, and I just don't think a loss to Illinois is the problem that people think it is. Maybe the James Franklin rumors are. Maybe they are not. We'll have to wait and see on that. But that, to me, is more problematic than a loss to Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, the rumors for Franklin, obviously, there's a reason I talked about it as soon as we opened this podcast. I mean, it seems to be everything right now. And, I wrote in my mailbag last week that I don't see rumors having a big impact. And I haven't, excuse me, up until this Sexton agent thing. I do think that's going to grab some people's attention. Now, only the good thing with these recruits and their families is they have James on speed dial. They can call him up whenever, and they're talking to him all the time. And James is going to. I think James would be explaining to most of them that he excuse me, that he wants to upgrade facilities and whatnot. And then that's been the talk for the longest time is that's what, that's why he uses leverages in these situations. But, hiring Sexton and when the timing of that to come out and just with the job openings that are out there, that's something that I think is going to grab families' attention now. So I don't know if I would say the rumors will have a big impact, but just there's a reason for people to watch closely now with that news coming out here. And I'm just very curious to see these next 6, 7, 8 weeks. And I don't want to. I feel like I'm coming off as concerned. I'm not, but it's just that news really just, at least it grabbed my attention a lot, and I think it will do the same for families. I mean, like I said, I had a couple families already kind of reach out asking my opinion about it, and I haven't really had too many people reaching out about it, and it's only been 24 hours now, and I've already had a couple parents ask about that. So that, to me, that just says, okay, people are paying attention to that particular part.
We're recording this. It's about 11 a.m. Eastern time, and it's Tuesday. So James Franklin's going to talk not long after this podcast is posted for you to listen to. By the time James Franklin talks, we might get some answers on what this whole agent thing is. Point. So bwi.rivals.com for the latest on that, because I do think the context here is important, and it's the when and the why, right? When did this happen? Did it happen in the offseason and it just now came out this week for whatever reason? Where they started was Clay Travis, Outkick.com, wrote that, as one of his takeaways, I think he does a column every week, but basically that, the Franklin coaching rumors are probably going to, start going one way or the other after this loss to Illinois, whether they're going to heat up or not. And he slipped in there just, it was a throwaway sentence more or less that Jimmy Sexton was his recent, his new agent. And I think that caught some eyes. And then Football Scoop, the coaching industry website, reported it via sources late Monday night. So that's how we got to this point. Again, if this happened in February and it just came out, I don't think it is something that has as much predictive ability as if it happened during the bye week or last week. So I think that's something to keep in mind as well. He's been with Trace Armstrong for a very long time. So it's curious to me why the move was made in the first place. But like I said, check out the site later because we are recording this prior to James Franklin's news conference, and there's 0.0 chance that he will not be asked about that. So we will get an update soon. Ryan, any other final thoughts here before we roll into the second half of the show?
On that topic? Not really, man. I mean, just like I kind of hit on. I'm just with the 2022 class. I mean, that we're obviously watching Barham, Emil Wagner, and Larry Turner Good. I was asking specifically about how this Jordan Allen decommitment would impact Turner Good, and basically I was told that they would try and take him regardless. So I don't want people to think that Penn State's not interested in adding another cornerback. Now Jordan Allen was listed as a safety on Rivals, but he would have been a cornerback. So Penn State's very much interested in Larry Turner Good, and still that kid's he's just gotten really quiet in recent weeks. So I tried actually reaching out to him not long after this, and I'm still trying to work on that. But Barham remains the focus, man. They need to get another linebacker. That's very clear. I think if they get Barham, and then you can see what goes from there. So, but we're going to start learning about transfers here soon enough too. I wouldn't be surprised if we start learning about a few of them maybe by the maybe the last couple of weeks of the season. So things will start to shake out soon.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Everything's sped up nowadays. You just saw Texas Tech fire their coach, despite the fact they're 5-3, and there's two reasons for that. One, they want to make sure he doesn't win enough games down the stretch because they decided they wanted to make a move, and you might as well just do it now.
Just
and
like
then
LSU.
Secondly, right, and then second, it goes back to the recruiting situation, and you're about to be a month from the first signing day, and you better be able to have a plan in place for that day, or you risk falling behind even further than you already are. So we'll see, but you're right. Some of that news is going to start trickling out here soon. It is the Blue White Illustrated Penn State Football and Recruiting Podcast. He's Ryan Snyder. I'm Greg Pickel. We're going to take a brief time out here as we get ready for the second half of the show for a public service announcement to tell you more about our new presenting sponsor, which is Manscaped, and specifically their Lawnmower 4.0, which is available now. We told you earlier, we'll tell you again, manscaped.com, 20 PSU is the code that gets you 20% off and free shipping with that specific code. You can order the Lawnmower 4.0 or anything else. What makes the trimmer different from all other trimmers. It's a multi-function on-off switch, includes a travel lock, a 4000K LED spotlight, which will help with your more precise shaving needs, and additional guard lengths allow you to customize your trim. Ryan, I know you have used it. I have used it. It's a great product. It's something that we both recommend. So join Ryan and I today and get ready for prime time, just like Penn State is before heading to Ohio State with Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code 20PSU at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use code 20PSU and unlock your confidence, and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. Ryan, moving on to a new topic here, back to the class of 2023. Josh Miller is a just massive offensive lineman who was on campus on Saturday. Despite the rain, I was able to go down into the field before the game and see him in person. And, you watch his film or you look at him in pads and you're like, yep, this guy's huge. And for those of you watching on YouTube, we are going to play the clips here, so you'll get to see a little bit of him. YouTube.com/Blue White Illustrated if you're not, but want to. An announcement's coming of some sort on November 2. You're trying to figure out what exactly that means. Is it a true picking a school announcement? Is it a top list of schools, etc.? What do you know at this point in time? What should we be expecting?
I think he's going to commit. Now, he's not really being very open about it, and, he wants to kind of keep it quiet and keep the suspense going, but I think he's going to commit to either Penn State or Clemson. Now, if you asked me this a week ago, I would have definitely said Clemson, and now I'm getting close to putting in a Penn State future cast. So we will see. I'm still working with some Penn State people, trying to get a feel for where they stand, but just from talking to some buddies down in Clemson, I don't feel that their staff is nearly as confident as they once were. About 2, maybe 3 weeks ago, I was basically told that he told Clemson he was leaning their way and everything was going well. And I do believe that kind of came after a visit to Clemson. And it's always important to note that because it's always positive after visits, right? You rarely hear negative stuff after visits. And now we're hearing very positive with Penn State. So obviously we're a week away from this. I'm still haven't quite put in a pick yet, but right now I think he's trending towards the Nittany Lions. We have him at 6'6", 323 on Rivals. That needs to be adjusted a bit. He's closer to 6'4", and he will definitely be an interior player at the next level. He's, like I said, listed as a tackle, but interior makes the most sense here. So I'm still kind of chipping away at learning exactly where he stands, but as of October 26th, I'm beginning to think that there's a very realistic chance that he will be committing on November 2nd. He's still saying it may not be a commitment at all, but I think it's going to be a commitment. I think he's wanted to have a commitment this whole time. If you were following this earlier in the month, he was saying it could be a top list, it could be a commitment. And to me, he was just kind of hedging to make sure he was 100% ready. And now that we're a week out, I feel like he knows what he wants to do. And both schools are very much a take. So, if he commits to Penn State and I know people start questioning, well, was he a take for Clemson? He's very much a take for Clemson. That I know for sure. And he's a take for Penn State too. And that was one thing I was wondering as well, up to even a week or two ago, is how hard is Penn State pursuing him here? Both schools absolutely want him, and I think the Nittany Lions lead right now. So hopefully we'll get a little bit of an update here in the coming days. I'll keep everybody on the board in the loop as much as I can. But I think he's leaning towards being a Nittany Lion, and that would be another really big get here. That would be to start November. But the trend, every commitment every couple of weeks for Penn State in the 2023 class, it's going really well despite the rumors and things we're talking about. So they definitely don't seem to have any be concerned, I guess is the right word to say about that stuff.
And I guess the one thing, and I know we don't want to spend this entire podcast talking about rumors and speculation and things like that, but I think we'd be doing a disservice to Penn State fans to not really point out the fact of what you just said and highlight, which is that you can be concerned about coaching rumors and speculation and this and that and the other thing all you want. You have to, though, realize, I think, that these kids committing to Penn State right now, despite what's going on outside the program, should give you a pretty good amount of insight into what's being said behind the scenes and what's going on inside the program. Especially when it comes to a guy like Joey Schlaffer, who has a family that played it for James Franklin at Penn State, who has known James Franklin. His family has known James Franklin for years. I mean, You think he's committing to Penn State if there's a really true belief from that family who's known this guy for a long time that he's probably not going to be here next year? I don't think so. I really doubt that. And maybe that's just too speculative on my part. I don't know. But I think if you're going to listen to the outside noise and the candidates and this, that, and the other thing, I think you also have to pay a closer attention to with what's going on behind the scenes and how these things continue to happen on a week to week, month to month basis, despite everything we're hearing and talking about.
Yeah, let me chime in on that. Let me play a little bit of devil's advocate too. You could also argue that Joey is out of all the commits right now, Joey has bought into Penn State, the football program,
Fair.
the university, all that more than anyone because of his brother history. Now, what you said is I agree with you more than not. Josh Miller committing when there's no time, there's no connection to Penn State at all. This is just a random recruit from Virginia. I don't want to say random, but there's no family ties or anything. That stands out to me more than Joey. And like I said, I think he's planning to commit. I really do. Now that I said that, it'll be Clemson, but I'm pretty sure he's aiming to commit to Penn State right now. So that would just grab my attention as much or more than Joey as far as what Penn State's saying behind the scenes and what guys are taking from it. So let's see. We'll find out here in a week from now. We'll be doing this podcast, and I'm not sure if we'll have an answer in a week from now. We usually do it in the morning, but he's aiming for November 2nd. So we'll find out soon.
I forgot that is next Tuesday. Yeah, we're gonna have to do our timing of that recording appropriately.
Yeah.
So if you are a subscriber, please hit the bell so you get a notification when it pops up on YouTube. Leave us some feedback on Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcast, and do keep in mind that if his announcement's going to be later in the day, we may have to switch up when this episode goes. So we'll let you know, and we'll keep everyone posted on social media and whatnot. But we're coming down the home stretch here, Ryan. You saw Beau Pribula last week, and he was impressive in another win for Central York. Now, you and I kind of talk off the air a little bit, and we'll get into it now. But it's Drew Aller, right? Every Penn State fan I've run into from Saturday night at the gas station on the way home to last night on Monday, going around to different places here in the Harrisburg area, and so far on social, it's when's Drew Aller get here? What's Drew Aller going to do with this offense next year? Blah blah blah. And I think that is look, the kid's really good. Yeah, it's super good. And you just published today on BlueWhiteIllustrated.com about how they have clinched their conference title, I believe it was. So
first time in school history. Yep.
Right. So, and that's because of how good he is. But it also is an overlook. People overlook Beau Pribula, who I know he's not playing the same level of competition, but him and Central York are just crushing almost everyone they play. And I know you were impressed, and I was impressed by what his coach had to say about him following the game in an interview you posted Tuesday morning. But yeah, really impressive kid, and one who should not be overlooked in this future quarterback cycle and situation, regardless of what happens next year.
Yeah, well, Beau's about to play some really good teams. He's going to start with William Penn here this upcoming weekend, and William Penn's 7-1 on the year. So we're about to his level of competition is about to really take a next step. And the best team they played so far, in my opinion, is Exeter Township. They played Cumberland Valley too, and he performed really well in both of those games. But in recent weeks, he's really just kind of taken his game to a completely different level. 87% completion percentage is what I put together here over the last 4 or 5 weeks. Now, the game I attended here Friday night wasn't, I guess, their whole game plan coming into Dallastown was to just jet sweep the hell out of them. And that's what they did, man. I mean, and it worked. They saw that there was going to be an advantage on the edges, and that's what they did. So the way they run their jet sweep, they kind of pitch it instead of handing it off. I had a good talk with Coach Jančić about that. He feels like it's safer than trying to stick it in the belly there. And it makes sense. I see fumbles on that all the time. So that padded Beau's stats. Of course, when you flick it forward, it counts as a pass. Dude, that pass right there that you just showed was one of the best passes I've seen from anybody this season. I've seen some great ones from Drew when I went out there. But that fade pass from Beau was excellent. And then really what I took away from this game, and I already kind of knew, is just Beau's athletic ability. You know, he really made some great runs here. I believe this is another one here where he's about to get sacked, goes to his left, about to go back to his right. Nope, never mind. Let's go back to the left here. And, he just makes some great plays with his feet. I mean, Beau runs a legit 4 high 4.5 40. I mean, probably like a 4.58, 4.59, 4.56. I mean, that's really good. He can still improve. And that pass right there was fell as an incompletion, but he put it right there on the money. So as far as like watching Beau's arm and how it's improved and whatnot, this wasn't the best game for that. And, that's just, they got a game plan and do whatever they can to win. I mean, he only had, 3, 4, 5 deep throws, but he finished 10 of 11, 211 yards. I believe he had around 90 yards or so rushing, and 3 total touchdowns. But I guess the main thing I want to hit on Beau Pribula is just that, one, he's a winner. We've talked about this many times. I mean, his record now, I believe, is something like 29-3 as a starter, something like that, which is very impressive. And then, two, he's just an incredibly smart player, and he gets smarter every time I see him. He doesn't make silly mistakes. Not that Drew Aller does or anything, but I would give Beau a bit of an advantage when it comes to I guess maybe not reading defense as well, because Drew does that well too. But just knowing when to maybe not take a negative play, but to just not force something. And Drew's good with that too. But I would give Beau a slight advantage on just making smart plays. He's definitely a little more athletic than Beau, or a little more athletic than Drew, so he can definitely make plays with his feet better. But I just think if people are writing off Beau Pribula as the second guy already, it's silly. I mean, to me, they have to pursue a transfer next year. I wrote that in the story today, even about Beau. They can't go into next season with Christian Veilleux and Taquan Roberson being the lead guys in that room. They have to add a transfer. I just think that is inevitable if Sean Clifford doesn't return. But even beyond that, this quarterback battle between Drew Aller and Beau Pribula, I think is going to be a lot better than a lot of Penn State fans think. So I've been high on Beau for a long time. I've seen him more than Drew too. To be fair, I've seen him 4 or 5 times now. Yes, his arm isn't as strong. He's not as big as Drew, so he's not just physically. He's not going to have the kind of strength that Drew does. But again, he runs a high 4.5 40. Dude, he hang cleans like 315 pounds. I mean, there's a lot. It's a lot to like in Beau Pribula. He's a winner. He's a hell of a leader. And anyone who's writing him off right now, I think you're going to, I don't want to say regret that, but it's going to be a good battle down the road. I feel confident saying that.
No question about it. Penn State is going to have what we assume will be a totally revamped quarterback room next year to some degree, and that makes the assumption that Sean Clifford will be out of town. It's a long time. I mean, he can come back for another year. It's a long time to be in college. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
But either way, these two guys will be fascinating to watch moving forward. Stay up to date on that, all the latest James Franklin rumors, and more Penn State football and recruiting news by visiting us at bluewhiteillustrated.com. Final segment here, Ryan, looking ahead to what's ahead. At this point, we have, all eyes kind of from a recruiting perspective at least turn to Michigan, because Penn State's on the road for the next 2 weeks at Ohio State and then at Maryland. Are you still looking at that Michigan game as one that's going to be a big one for Penn State on the recruiting front?
Well, let's figure out the kickoff time. That's going to be a big part of it. As we saw this past weekend, yes, Illinois was Illinois, but when you have a noon kickoff, it's going to have a drastic impact on your list. When guys across the region have to wake up at 4 or 5 a.m. to get there, it's like Josh Miller, for example, to be there they want guys there at 10 a.m. so they can see the team entering and all that stuff. That's a long drive for somebody in Virginia and all across the region. So that's a big part of it. I don't think we're going to have a night game for that. The conference would have to sign some waivers, and basically anything after November 6th. I think both teams have to agree on it, and it's kind of more of a conference decision than the television decision. So to me, noon or 3:30 makes the most sense. I do have a few people I talked to in that little industry, and I thought it would be a 3:30 kick. And now I've had some people mentioning that they think it could be a noon kick. So if that ends up being a noon kick, it'll have a drastic impact on the list. Now, with that said, it's still shaping up to be an awesome game. So are we going to see Auburn? No, I don't think you're going to see that list again this year. That list was one of the deepest lists I've ever seen in my life. But I'd be still surprised if it's not the second best, second deepest recruiting class, or recruiting visitor list, of the year. Two guys I will mention quick that I am expecting. Samuel Mpempe. Is it Mpempa? Mpempa, I believe it is what it is. He's at IMG Academy, listed as an athlete, 6'4", 230. offers from everybody. Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Michigan's in there, Oregon, Oklahoma. I can go on and on. Texas, USC. Getting him on campus would be huge. I mean, he's a 5-star guy. He's not a 5-star yet on Rivals, but he's ranked 19th in the country, and he is planning to be at that game. I know that's something Penn State's been working on for a while now, so let's see how that shapes up. And then one other guy to keep an eye on that's also planning to come from down south is Ethan Davis, a tight end out of, is it Swanee, Georgia? I know he's at Collins Hill, which is where John Scott actually just was a couple weeks ago to watch. Collins Hill played I believe it was a Thursday night game on ESPN. John Scott was at that game. So Davis is somebody that another tight end, man. I forgot to mention Davis earlier, actually, when we were talking. So he's somebody they're going to keep working on. Again, I can rattle off the Georgia, the LSU, Oregon, Texas, Auburn and Florida. I missed Texas A&M. I mean, he's got a ton of stacked offers. A top 250 player. So those are two elite guys that are planning to make the trip. I would expect it to be another one of those situations where, a good chunk of the committed guys would be there. And then you see, maybe 20 to 30 or so scholarship players from throughout the region. It won't be like the 50 or so uncommitted scholarship guys that came for Auburn, but it'll still be a very impressive list. I really want to see that kickoff time before I start, promoting it and making it seem like it's going to be huge. Because if it's a noon kick, it's going to have a big impact.
Plenty of Penn State football and recruiting news on the horizon. Stay with us at bluewhiteillustrated.com for the latest. Ryan, we covered a lot of ground today. Any final thoughts? For me, I think it's this. We're going to know a lot more about where Penn State stands in a number of different ways in about a month from now. So Penn State fans, it's what we love to provide information. We love to give updates and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, I think we both know that this is going to be an ever-changing story to some degree over the next month. So buckle in, get ready for the ride one way or the other.
Yeah. I mean, I've hit on it enough in this podcast. I feel like I'm scaring fans talking about it so much. I'm sure somebody in the YouTube comments will let me know. One thing I just will add quick is we're about to have playoffs here. It's starting off in Ohio. Drew Alar and Medina have the number 2 seed in their region, and they should go pretty deep. Caden Saunders and Westerville South have the number 5 seed in their region. Westerville South has kind of struggled with quarterback play and stuff of the year. That's why, Caden doesn't have some of the crazy stats that you see elsewhere. But, I'm just curious to see how far they go. Of course, everybody's expecting Drew to go deep. And then this is the final week for Pennsylvania. So what happens in District 3, there's a potential game coming up with Anthony Ivy and Beau Pribula, depending on what happens this upcoming week in the District 3 6A playoffs. Governor Mifflin and Nick Singleton, they actually had the week off because of a team had COVID. So, it was kind of like a bye week, which actually maybe worked well for them with the playoffs coming up. They're going to be the runaway favorite for 5A. So it's playoff time in Pennsylvania, and it's actually starting this week in Ohio too. So lots of fun to monitor, man. This is when games get really good.
He's Ryan Snyder. I'm Greg Pickel. Stick with us, bluewhiteillustrated.com for the latest, and we'll talk to you next week. This has been another edition of the Blue White Illustrated Penn State Football and Recruiting Podcast. We'll catch you next time.